So I have a lot of my realtors ask, what should I know about loans? Because obviously we would never expect a realtor to know all the ins and outs of loans, nor would we really want realtors telling a bunch of clients the ins and outs of loans because it may not apply to their situation. But there are some basics about loan requirements that can be helpful when talking to clients. Number one, I would say know in general what your minimum down payment requirements are going to be. So for conventional, that's typically a minimum of 3% down, 5% if they've owned another home. For FHA, that's typically 3.5% as a minimum. VA, USDA are both 0% down minimum. Doesn't mean they will only put 0% down, but that's the minimum. So, and then you have other like DSCR loans, bank statement loans. Those could be lender dependent. So those could be anywhere from 10 to 20% down. The other big thing, especially when you're going to negotiate with contracts, is to know your maximum seller concessions. So for example, conventional is typically 3% as your maximum seller concession. If they're putting less than 10% down, above 10%, you can ask for up to 6%. VA is technically 4%, but there are other costs that your seller can cover. A good example is paying off a debt at closing. So you can go above 4% for VA. It just depends on if there are other costs that can be allowed with that loan. And then you've got your FHA and your USDA. Those are your highest. Those are at 6%. So you want to be careful. You don't want to be negotiating a conventional loan and asking for 6% in seller credit because we're not going to likely be able to use all of it. And I would say lastly, keep in mind the majority of your loans are meant to be primary residences. So a good example, USDA, got to be a primary residence. VA, got to be a primary residence. FHA technically has to be a primary residence, but if it's like a duplex or a triplex, they can't have other people living in the other units. They have to live in one of the units. And for conventional, it can be either. It can be their primary residence, it can be like a duplex, triplex, or it can be an investment property with a higher down payment. But those are the three basics that I would say get comfortable with, get familiar with, ask me or your lender if you're confused, or always check in before you start writing those contracts to make sure you know where it should be.